If you are currently frustrated with your health or are dealing with any sort of health issues, or you simply want to take your health to new levels and need the inspiration and motivation to do that, we are launching the Extreme Health Academy very, very soon. We partnered up. I'm finally able to say this with a good friend of ours, Dr. John Bergman, and we are going to be offering monthly Q&As where you're going to get access to ask questions to different doctors as well as Dr. Bergman. We're going to be offering group cleanses every single season, as well as having monthly courses on all the different organ systems of your body and different health challenges you may be dealing with. We're going to have a bunch of quick wins in there, tons of member perks, health resources, an online community, and all kinds of really, really great stuff in the Extreme Health Academy. So if you are currently wanting to take your health to the next level and get access to all of this exclusive practical information that's going to be very inspirational and motivational, go to extremehealthacademy.com, or you can go to it from this show page, which is extremehealthradio.com/546. Welcome, everyone, to another edition, another show here of Extreme Health Radio. Thanks so much for joining us. As you guys probably know, the show is bi-weekly, so we do 2 shows per week. So if you haven't subscribed to our show, if you haven't connected with us on Facebook or get notifications of our new shows via email or whatever, feel free to sign up and join what we have going on. Lots of cool stuff coming up on our show. So make sure to subscribe and stay tuned to everything we have going on. Lots of cool free shows for you to learn and be empowered about your health and get practical information and tips for all of us to be healthy. So that's the whole point of the show. So today we've got Dr. Joan Vernikos, and on the show we're going to be talking about sitting, standing, standing. I mean, such simple things, right? I mean, these are things that it blows my mind that we have to even talk about these things. But it's it's one of these things in our modern culture, right, where we sit too long and we do a lot of unhealthy habits every single day, way too long. So we're going to be talking with her about sitting and moving and standing and keeping our bodies healthy, disease-free for a long, long time. So if you guys want to check out the show notes for today's show or grab the links to the sponsors for today's show or anything that we talk about, I'm going to do my best to take notes during the show. So all you have to do is remember 546. So if you go to extremehealthradio.com/546, the show notes will be available for you there. So if you're listening while you're exercising or driving, you can go back to your website or go back to our website, Extreme Health Radio, and just do /546. And that way you can get all the show notes. So Dr. Joan Vernikos, if you guys aren't familiar, is a well-known expert in stress and healthy aging. And so she retired from NASA as the Director of Life Sciences following a career as both a researcher and an administrator. I can say that, an administrator. And so she's been committed to bringing her knowledge and insights on healthy living to the general public. So she published a book back in 2011 called Sitting Kills, Moving Heals: How Everyday Movement Will Prevent Pain, Illness, and Early Death, and Exercise Alone Won't. So she talks about if you exercise a lot, like I do, but if you sit a lot, you're going to want to listen to this show because she's going to say some things that will really, really open your eyes in terms of the amount of time we spend sitting and exercising. So let me go ahead and mute this music here so that she can hear me. Let me turn her microphone up really quickly. Dr. Joan, can you hear me okay?
I can indeed. Okay,
excellent, excellent. Well, I'm just really excited to have you on the show because I've heard your stuff over the years. I saw you with Dr. Mercola, and a former guest of ours sent us your video again, and so that reminded me to have you on the show. So I'm super excited that you joined us today.
That's terrific.
Yeah. So you've been doing this research for a long, long time. I said in the intro that you used to work for NASA, and you have a lot of talks on YouTube people can listen to. How many years did you work for NASA?
30 plus.
30 plus. And you were the Director of Life Sciences the whole time, or did you move around a lot?
No. I ended up being the Director of Life Sciences. I started with them in the very early years in 1964.
Uh-huh.
and was a fellow, and then a research scientist, and then various administrative jobs at Ames Research Center in Moffett Field, California.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 1993, I just applied for the heck of it for the job of Director of Life Sciences in Washington.
Right.
And I got it. And so I packed my research and my belongings and headed for Washington, D.C. to become a bureaucrat.
That's funny. So you were there from 93 on, you said?
From 93 till 2000.
2000, okay. And then you retired in 2000?
And then I left in 2000. That covered the 1998 mission of John Glenn.
Uh-huh.
I was somewhat instrumental in helping him get back into space. He was a super guy.
Wow.
And when he was launched, I had to do a lot of public speaking to describe what he was doing, why we were doing it, what we were looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And much to my surprise, I didn't do too well speaking to the general public as a scientist.
Mm-hmm.
Not an uncommon feature.
Right.
And at the end of my talks, I'd have people come up and say to me, well, this is very interesting. How come we never heard about this, about what happens to the astronauts? And where can we read more about it? And I had a hard time pointing them to non-technical writings. And so I thought this was ridiculous. If I'm going to speak to the general public, I had to do something about it. And maybe I'll do some notes so that I have something to hand out. The notes turned out to be a book.
Uh-huh.
One book, another book, another book.
That's interesting. So what, in terms of the astronauts, when they were going into space, outside of what most people know about, the bone density loss, the osteoporosis, and these types of things. Outside of those, what were some of the other implications of being in space for so long and when they came back?
Well, of course, it was a slow journey to identify the various things that were happening. Uh-huh. But looking back over the span of 50-some years, where of course, first of all, we had observations. Mm-hmm. And then more inquiring kind of observations, and then research. And the sum total, to just put it in one line, is that the totality of the changes that we see happening in astronauts, especially now that they're going up there for longer periods of time, like 6 months, is not unlike what you would think of as an older person.
So how long does it take for them to get to that state, being in space?
They're beginning to get to that within days.
Really?
If you know that what the trajectory is going to be. Mm-hmm. By 6 months, for instance, they've lost, let's put it that way, on Earth, you lose about 1% of bone a year. Mm-hmm. In space, you lose about 1% of bone a week. If you're lucky, a month.
Oh my gosh, that is unbelievably
We had
fast.
one fellow, when they started going up 6 months, which is not too long ago, one fellow lost 30% of his bone in 6 months. That's a lot of bone loss.
Whoa, that's crazy. So
now, they don't all do that. I mean, he was the exception, the winner.
Yeah.
There's one person who hardly lost any, and that was in Skylab in 80 days, where he should have. So that it varies a lot from individual to individual. But most of them lose an average of about, let's say, 1% of bone a week.
You know what's interesting to me is not that they lose the bone, but the variance of these people. I wonder what's going on with them.
Well, there must be a genetic sensitivity. I mean, like anything else, a predisposition towards losing bone or not losing bone. A lifestyle habits. What state do they come into this as? It's kind of silly because we have some blood samples or plasma samples from, say, the Skylab days, where we know this thing happened, but tell you the restrictions that are on NASA's anything that has to do with astronauts. They wait until they've died before they release the information.
Wow.
I mean, anyway, these are the regulations that they've put on themselves more than anything else.
Yeah.
So it must be somewhat in terms of predisposition to lose more faster than others. And that's the only thing I can attribute it to.
Yeah.
I would have loved to, now that we can, go back and measure the DNA in these people that we flew in the 70s.
Oh, you mean so measure their DNA now?
Measure the DNA now.
Oh,
and map out, what their genes that regulate bone loss, for instance, and do the gamut of them. It's not that many, and see if there are differences in the astronauts that we have studied. And there are plenty of them now.
Yeah, that would be interesting research to do. Do you think that will ever get done?
Well, I remember a leader in bone research who was giving a presentation, and he presented this work, and I said, have you analyzed the Skylab plasma data? And he said, oh, that would be fabulous. And he asked for the samples, and he was refused.
Really?
And so they're sitting on the wretched things.
Wow.
Which is only government could do. But it is possible. I mean, I'm sure. I know that the various committees of the National Academy have asked for things like that, and we have to have the DNA and the predispositions of astronauts. If nothing else, it's somewhat unethical if you have someone who has a tremendous tendency, one way or another, whatever it is. I mentioned bone, but there are other things.
Right.
One thing I had mentioned early on, and I'm digressing, is, for instance, radiation sensitivity. Different people are more sensitive to radiation, gamma rays especially, than others. Well, if you're going to send someone on a long journey, say like exploration on Mars or something, for 2 years, you better choose someone who's pretty resistant to losing bone or losing anything. Right?
That would be a natural selection process.
And the answer to my question all these years ago, and repeatedly from the National Academy, is, we cannot... it would not be ethical to exclude someone on the basis of something like that. Well, I beg to differ. I think if you know, saying you don't want to know is unethical.
Oh, for sure. Because
if you have the methodology and you don't take advantage of it.
Now, with these longer flights that they're doing now and the potential, like Elon Musk was talking about, going to Mars and things, are they going to do that, do you think?
I have not heard that they're doing any kind of genetic work.
Wow. That's amazing.
And they certainly don't select on that basis.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, you definitely want to know, and especially since that is going into space is such a unique thing to do, and so unnatural that you'd want to gather as much data as possible.
Yeah, there are people walking around who are more resistant to radiation.
Yeah.
The people who are treated for cancer and so on, they know these sorts of things. Yeah. And I hope that Elon Musk is a different breed and much more forward-thinking, that would be one of the first things he looks at before he hires anybody.
Now,
because nobody's going to blame him of being partial.
What kinds of things are the astronauts doing in orbit in order to prevent the loss of bone? What's the number one thing, do you think?
Exercise. They do a lot of exercise, from 2 to 4 hours of exercise daily, not weekends, of course. We traditionally don't exercise on weekends.
You take the weekends off.
Don't get me on that one. They do both aerobic and resistance, which is difficult to do in space, and we have a special super-duper resistive exercise device. Again, maybe when we're through with this talk, I may have had the opportunity to explain to you what I think is important in maintaining health and maintaining bone. And once a day doesn't do it. And once a day is not going to do it in space, in particular, because once you stop exercising, when you stop exercising here on the ground, you have an after response, an after reaction. Mm-hmm. I assume you exercise.
Mm-hmm.
You sound as if you're the kind of person who does a lot of exercise.
Right. Yeah, so you talk a lot about, I've heard you speak about how it's important to do exercise on an ongoing basis all throughout the day. And maybe even the research is showing that it's more beneficial to do it throughout the day versus just having a set time where you do it for an hour. Is that correct?
Boy, I'm proud of you.
Yeah.
You've actually read what I'm reading. Yes, I'm overwhelmed. Yes, it is, very definitely.
Uh-huh.
The same amount of exercise in 1 hour or spread out throughout the day is more effective if it's spread out throughout the day.
So, okay, so essentially that's really interesting. So let's say you're going to do a weightlifting but a lot of people do yoga and do these classes where they sort of end, don't they?
Yes, I mean, and it's all right. What kind of exercise you do, each bout, each time you exercise. Okay, let's back up a minute. It's not exercise. Exercise, intense exercise, is not as effective as moderate exercise.
Is not as effective as moderate, right?
Correct. Moderate is better than intense. Let's get that through our heads.
Now, what do you mean by better in terms of what
and
kind of
more
effect?
Effective in preventing the anti-gravity or the gravity effect.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Okay. So if you sit a lot, as an example, if you have a very sedentary job, if you're talking to me now and you're sitting, which I suppose you are,
mm-hmm.
You over a period of time, this sedentary behavior is quasi-equivalent to being in space.
Okay.
But less so.
Less so.
If you were lying down in bed, it would be closer to being in space. After all, we use that as a model
mm-hmm.
in volunteers. And space accelerates the age-like changes more, faster, 10 times faster.
Okay.
But sitting does a lot of harm all by itself. And it's not the total number of hours we sit in a day, which is the common way people describe prolonged sitting, but or the harmful effects of prolonged sitting.
Uh-huh.
But it is how many hours of uninterrupted sitting. In other words, if I take 14 hours or 16 hours a day, and I stand up every 30 minutes or every hour, I can pretty much prevent any adverse effects of the sitting.
Really? By standing every 20, 30 minutes?
Just standing up and sitting down again.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because for me, I have a stand-up desk that I've had for multiple years, but at the beginning of this year, I just made a choice. I just made a decision I'm not going to sit anymore, and I haven't been sitting. But what I have been doing is I've been sitting for the shows that we do. So we do 2 shows a week, and they're usually about an hour long. And what I'll do is to give my feet a break, I will sit during the shows, and then after the shows, I'll stand for the whole rest of the time. And I stand all week, every day, all day, every day. Is that good, do you think? Is it too much standing?
It's too much standing.
Too much.
Standing has its own adverse effects.
Okay.
I mean, let's face it, people who work in retail, for instance, in shops and so on, and stand on their feet all day at counters and so on, have problems. There are different kinds of problems. Their feet swell. They may have clots. Their back complains.
Uh-huh.
To name a few. It's not as bad as the effects of sitting all day.
Sitting, yeah. So what do you think would be a good ratio for someone like an office worker who's able to sort of control how much they sit and stand?
Well, I think as long as you interrupt what you do, the body is not used to a square wave effect. What I mean is to a sustained effect.
Mm-hmm.
It complains. Because,
it does, doesn't it?
It lets you know that something's not right.
Yeah.
For beginners, let's take the simple one, which is back pain. When you lie down, or if you go into space, you grow taller. Your spinal cord lengthens, your vertebrae separate, and you basically decompress.
Okay, when you're just lying down.
When you're just lying in bed. Like children especially who lie in bed when they have a sickness or something, they stand up afterwards and they say, wow, he's grown taller.
Wow, okay.
He quickly recompresses, though, and so do astronauts. And, of course, when they have been in space for a month or so, or a week, and they have decompressed, when they come back, and whammo, they really compress, especially as the thin little muscles on either side of the spine that support the spine have wasted, have atrophied.
Wow,
so
that's interesting.
You are, in fact, compressing now the spine, which is very painful.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on? I have an inversion table. Do you think those are good?
Yes, I think they're a good break. Okay, but it's not nothing is a permanent effect. What the body says is, hey, look, I go to bed at night and I sleep, and lots of things happen during that time, but that's not a point today. And then the sun rises, and there's light, and what do?
We open our eyes, and then we get out of bed.
Bingo. And when we get out of bed, we stand. And then what do?
Then we walk.
We move.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of moving. We walk. We go from one place to another and sit and stand and walk and do all kinds. Bend over to pick up something. Lean, stretch up to get a cup or a glass or a plate or whatever. But we move, and we theoretically, it's daytime, we move all day long, up and down, up and down, up and down. Yeah. And nobody has said you stand every 30 minutes or you sit for this much. Yeah. We didn't have chairs. It used to be squatting or kneeling or sitting on the ground.
Yeah, we had a guest a while back on, I forget, his name was Kelly Starrett, I think his name was. And I was talking to him about this, the standing desk and the sitting and the standing, and he was saying the exact same thing you were. And he was mentioning how even the chair, like what essentially it becomes is like a cast. And, your range of motion can't move that much within a chair. So he said it's not so much the standing is good for you, it's just that it allows a greater range of motion for you to be able to bend down or do a little stretch and continue. So it allows for more movement, which I think is the benefit, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got a head start. You're already up there.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, of course, that happens when you stand, and it's important to stand often as opposed to standing for a block of time, is that every time you stand, two things happen. One is you increase brain blood flow. And you increase brain blood flow not because as you stand your blood rushes to your head, but because your blood rushes to your feet.
Mm-hmm.
But then the cardiovascular system responds to that sudden, reduction in what it sees in blood to pump blood back up to your brain.
Mm-hmm.
So the secondary effect, which is very important, is that every time you stand up, you're sending blood up to your head. It's the only time your brain sees any blood. So, and it's very important because from age 20 on, when you go to college, you probably sit too long and don't get much blood up to your brain.
Now, is there a connection between the strength of the pelvic floor and standing?
In what respect?
Well, I've read some stuff recently that talks about one of the reasons why they're sort of postulating that this adult diaper industry is growing so much is because people are sitting for the bulk of their lives and in their career and their job, and when they get older, their pelvic floor becomes so weak that they can't control their bowels. And I'm wondering if there's a connection between the two.
Well, it doesn't surprise me.
Okay.
I have not thought about it, but I'll tell you one of the consequences of sitting is, apart from anything else, you're occluding your circulation to the lower part of your body.
So there's an impingement, right, of lack of blood flow that happens at the hips when they bend? Is that correct?
Exactly. And if you're slightly overweight or pregnant, or your posture is peculiar and you're leaning forward periodically, you're occluding even more.
By sitting.
And so that part of your body is starved of circulation, which means it doesn't see any oxygen, doesn't see, blood circulation. Now, it's interesting to me that sitting causes a multitude, every conceivable disorder that we have heard of, particularly in recent years.
Right.
One of these is cancer, particularly cancer of prostate, ovaries, colorectal, colon, rectal, and gastrointestinal in general. Particularly, it also causes increased breast cancer and so on. But the predominant ones, as you can pick up in no time, are the ones that are in the lower part of your body. And I think it's an interaction between things sitting would do anyway, anywhere, plus the circulation, cutting off the circulation.
Yeah, because once you start limiting blood flow, then it's kind of like anything could happen at that point, right?
Yeah, sure. So I'm not surprised at the kind of things. The other thing, of course, that standing up periodically does is it triggers the inner ear and the balance organs, and that is extremely important. And that's why I say you don't need necessarily to stand up long when you've been sitting. Just changing position and sitting down again triggers a stimulus to your inner ear that sensitizes. I call it tuning, like a tuning fork, and that sensitizes the inner ear balance organ, and so that when you need to get up and run away from the tiger or whatever, you are able to.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what is it doing? Is it's recalibrating maybe your balance?
It's sensitizing. It's sensitizing the organ. It makes it more sensitive to future times that you stand up.
Well, that's interesting too, because you see a lot of issues with, as we get older, an inability to balance and people falling, or maybe sometimes people's hips break and then they fall. So
it has nothing. In my view, it has nothing to do with age.
Yeah,
it has to do with the absence of using gravity, and I call it using gravity because in space you don't have much,
right.
almost zero.
Right.
In lying in bed, it is in the wrong direction. It is not pulling you from head to toe, it is pulling you across your chest. So it's minimizing its effectiveness. And then in sitting, of course, your sort of column, vertical column is reduced. But if you don't move at all, you're not... There are several things that happen when you do that. Is, yes, your muscles and your metabolism is reduced, your insulin is resistance is increased, and the whole metabolic sort of conglomerate of a response happens because you're not moving.
Mm-hmm.
But more than that, you're not sensitized. You're not stimulating. You're abolishing the stimulus that Mother Nature gives us. Gravity. If you look at gravity, it's a force of the universe that pulls us downward towards the center of the earth, and we don't go floating around in the universe. Okay. Its role is it's a stimulus. If we use it. If we don't use it, it is blank.
Mm-hmm.
There's no change. So when you sit and you don't move, you are removing the change signal. If you stand up and you stand up often enough, you are using this gravity stimulus. You're using gravity as a stimulus to sensitize your inner ear, plus a lot of other parts of your body. Like, in the seat of your pants, the pilots talk about flying by the seat of their pants. They literally, it's your bum that has sensors. The sole of the foot has gravity sensors. The palm of the hand has gravity sensors, and probably other places. So, yes, I think the muscles along the spine, down the spine, probably sense the pull of gravity, which, if you delete all this sensing by sitting or by lying down, then your body deteriorates. So it cannot respond next time you want it to.
Yeah, it's interesting, too, because you're talking about the stimulus that's happening as a result of the gravity that's pulling our body down. But what's interesting to me, too, is that once that happens, if you're using gravity to your benefit, it seems as though internally, there's probably hundreds or even thousands of internal connections and wirings that's going on inside of us to communicate to one another, to the cells, to balance. And so the internal communications also just being deprived as well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And even right down to the cell level, even if you were not talking about the nervous system, the network of the nervous system and the circulation, which is to a great extent gravity dependent also. And not to mention your lymphatic system and even your cerebrospinal fluid, the fluid inside your spinal cord, that doesn't have a flow system. It depends on movement. Both that and the lymphatic system depends on movement to shift around.
Yeah.
And in addition, gravity works directly on every cell of the body. And what happens is like a push-pull situation. If you take the skin, for instance, as you move, the skin shifts depending on gravity. So the skin cells communicate with one another and with other cells in the body. So it is and it's a sack of water, basically. So it communicates through the shifts in water, through proteins that happen inside the cell and communicate with the next cell. So it is an incredible network.
Yeah.
I couldn't even begin to conceive everything. Everything is affected and is dependent on movement and is dependent on on-off movement as opposed to constant movement.
Right. Yeah. It's so interesting too, because I wonder if there's been any studies or research done on autoimmune disease. Because when you look at something like autoimmune disease, you think of the body's inability to communicate effectively what's going on in terms of the inflammation cycles and patterns and things like that. And I wonder if that has any connection to sitting. But I bet they haven't looked into that, have they?
I don't doubt that it does. They know, or they, the classic sort of response to immune advice for immune disease is exercise. And they don't really know why, except they know exercise helps. What is it exercise is doing? Well, it's doing something for a short period of time. Nobody's looked at whether you're doing it throughout the day or not.
Right. Now, going back to exercise, I'm really curious about what you said, because I'm a big exerciser. I love exercising and working out and stuff. And I do have like a gym routine that I do, a few times a week out in the backyard with weights and things.
Yeah.
And obviously that's something that I do all the time. But I also have like a rebounder here.
Yeah.
That I could do ongoing throughout the day, because you talk a lot about like you said before, how it's more beneficial to exercise throughout the whole day. So I'm curious how I could start implementing that.
Well, I think if you have a rebounder, it's like a trampoline, isn't it?
Yeah, a little tiny trampoline.
A little trampoline.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And a rebounder, a vibrator. There are devices you can use to provide this kind of stimulation. But again, it's not once a day. It's better a little bit spread out than not. We have had 3 astronauts. No one has yet, I've heard, made much of it. But I'm impressed because I come at it believing you need to exercise throughout the day, especially in space.
Yeah.
Because in space, the minute you stop exercising, you're right back to zero gravity.
Right. It's just sort of an ongoing process of...
And there's no after response in space to exercise. Okay. Well, guess what? You're right back to zero. There's no persistent, sustained benefit that the after response to exercise has on Earth, because you're still in gravity.
Right.
So if you exercise more frequently in space, theoretically, you should be better off. Well, there have been 3 cases I know that got. One was a Russian cosmonaut who fell out with his crewmates. They were on Mir. And he got so angry with them for whatever. He didn't speak to them. And so that he could avoid speaking to them, he got on the treadmill. And he hogged the treadmill for the entire time.
Yeah.
Really, so that he would be away from them and also deprive them of getting on the treadmill.
Yeah, a little vengeance, right?
A vengeance, yeah, a little vengeance.
Yeah.
And he came back fit as a fiddle.
Really?
Compared to the others. Now, that was just one case. 2 women. One was Sunita Williams, who was training for a marathon. And she made a big deal about how she couldn't stop training when she was on the spacecraft, and she was going to use it throughout the day. And the other one is a similar situation, a woman who was exercising for some event. And both those did exceptionally better than their crewmates. So it's not scientific information, but there is observational information that when they were active throughout the day, and obviously they were not on all the time, but throughout the day, they did better.
Yeah.
Well, someone should, of course, they haven't read my book, so.
Right. I think it would be interesting to try that, because I think one of the issues that people get into is, they listen to something like this and they already live active lifestyles, but like I used to sit, for 12 hours a day, but I would work out, and I thought back, 10, 15 years ago that, the workout that I was doing was offsetting the sitting, but that's not the case.
But it's not so.
Yeah.
It's not so at all. So the kind of interruption of the sitting is with moderate, intermittent exposure. In fact, I've just done another interview with Merkele.
Oh, okay.
And so his first thing is intermittent, low intensity but high frequency movement is a powerful, inexpensive, and highly effective strategy for health and longevity.
Now say that again. That's interesting. Intermittent,
low intensity.
Low intensity.
But high frequency.
Okay.
Movement is a powerful, inexpensive, and highly effective strategy for health and longevity.
It makes so much sense to me because when if I stand, I stand on a little anti-fatigue mat, and I have a lacrosse ball that I roll underneath the bottoms of my feet to allow me to stand.
Yeah.
And when I stand for a long time, I'll notice that my feet will still hurt and then my back will hurt. But then I could go for a walk for, the same amount of time that I was standing and I feel great.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that we would want to keep moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
so it's that, and from where I come, you need to alternate the posture change.
Okay.
Because you need to be tuning your body. You're not just only maintaining your circulation and your metabolism. You also want to tune your system.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's every 20 or 30 minutes because that's what I happened to do. 1 hour. And 1 hour of sitting, triglycerides increase, which is the first sort of indicator of a pre-diabetic state.
Oh, just after 1 hour of sitting.
Yeah, which I think is very funny because they get very upset with me when I tell them that my audience that you're going to your doctor for a physical, and you're driving from home an hour and a half sometimes. Okay, and then you arrive at the doctor and you sit in the reception and you wait 15 minutes, half an hour. Okay, and then they call you in for a blood sample. Yeah, sounds about right.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, of course you're a pre-diabetic.
I know, right? Yeah, I mean,
you're not a pre-diabetic. You've just been sitting.
Yeah, for hours
uninterrupted.
I wrote an article on our website quite some time ago, and it was about the dangers of sitting. And I did some calculations between, just the average sort of day of an American going to work every day and the amount of time they're sitting. And I think it was something around 18 hours of either sitting or laying down, which is just nuts. Yeah,
it is. It is. Yeah, and it's. It's not good. It's all of the day. Now, if I had someone in my audience one time say to me, "Oh, I can't stand up every 30 minutes. I'd be fired." I said, "Well, what do you do?" He said, "I work with computers, and my boss would fire me." I said, "Well, do you drink any water?" "Oh, yes," he says, "I have a bottle on my desk." I said, "Fine, put the bottle a couple of desks down the way. So you have to stand up and get up there to get your water. And do it often, and then you'll have to go to the restroom often." Yeah, and another chance to stand, and you have to structure your life. Yep. So how long, if someone does have a very controlled environment and they're unable to really do something like that, outside of quitting and doing something like that, if someone stands up, if they're sitting all day long and they stand up, how long do they need to stay standing, do you think? Well, I personally don't think it takes more than a minute. More than a minute? Yeah. Eric Pepper, I don't know if you've heard of him. He's at San Francisco State. He's a psychology professor, but we won't hold that against him. Right. But he has his students stand up at 30 minutes and wave their arms around and sit down again. Okay. And he is convinced, then he has some research evidence, that their cognitive abilities are increased by doing that. That's interesting. Their cognitive abilities. Cognition is that's what he's interested in, that they're paying attention to what he's saying. And I think that's fascinating. And so things like that, I had done a study, the last study I did at Ames, where I had people lie in bed for 4 days, which is all it takes, really, to decondition. And I the question I was asking is, how often do I need to stand up to prevent the effects of lying in bed continuously?
Mm-hmm.
I thought, well, I did 4 times a day or 8 times a day. Okay. So every 2 hours or every 4 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And because I was trying to test exercise, and we used to bring the subject to the treadmill. And in those days, I did 15 minutes because that's what I guessed.
Mm-hmm.
I used standing up as a control.
Okay.
But they would stand up the same amount of time and not exercise on the... Well, at the end of the study, my statistician came in and said, John, you're not going to like this. I said, what? He said, well, standing is better than walking. and I said, interesting.
Wow.
I wonder exactly what you said, how long you need to stand for.
Yeah.
And my next experiment was going to be 5 minutes and then cut it down to 1 minute.
Okay.
But I left NASA. I didn't do any more research in a lab. And I got an award for my first book, The G Connection. And I was awarded whatever the award was. And I was coming back to my dinner table, and the man was sitting at the table, waved his arm around and said, what's your book all about? And I thought, okay. It's about keeping you young as long as you live.
Mm-hmm.
Being cheeky. And he said, oh, yes, how? And I said, well, stand up every 30 minutes. And then I looked a little closer, realized he's sitting in a wheelchair.
Uh-huh.
And I felt very foolish.
Yep.
And went back to my dinner table, and a colleague said, do you know who that was? I said, no, I couldn't see very well. He said, well, I said, the frail man. And he said, yes, he's 92 years old, and he's George Mueller. And George Mueller was a very young project manager of the Apollo mission, and then went on to be deputy administrator and all that. Very testy man, but brilliant. And I thought, oh, well, I put my foot in it. End of story. About 3 months later, my colleague calls. He says, you won't believe this. We went to the Muellers for dinner, rang the doorbell, and who should open but George? George opened the door, not in a wheelchair, standing up, and proceeded to serve drinks.
Wow.
And we asked his wife, what happened? And she said, he just did it all himself. Did what? He stood up every 30 minutes. Well, he's disciplined enough to have done it.
Yeah, of course.
And I could hardly believe it because this was 3 months later. I would never have guessed that someone who's wheelchair bound, okay, so maybe he can get up and go to the bathroom if he has to. But most of the day he was wheelchair bound.
Wow. And at 93, you said, right?
Yes, he died last December, 96.
Wow.
So he could now use a walker when he went out, but in the house he used nothing.
Wow. And so what did he do? He just started getting up every 30 minutes?
He just got up every 30 minutes. And 1 minute. And you want to wave your arms up, wave your arms up. But it's not that as much as it is, because you're only burning 12 calories when you stand up like that.
It's not really a calorie burner, right?
It's not exactly a calorie issue.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating.
People can't quite put their
it almost seems like it's like a clock, like you're resetting a clock. It's like a reset.
Well, let me tell you something else that is interesting. Doctor, I was presenting earlier this year at an aging conference, and I emphasized this frequent interruption, standing up throughout the day. And she came to me and she said, I've got myself one of these Apple watches that tells me heart rate and time and how many steps I've done and calories. And she said, I don't have the time to go and one fell swoop and do 10,000 steps.
Right.
So I decided I was going to distribute my 10,000 steps throughout the day, so many every hour. And what I noticed was that after a few days, breaking up the 10,000 steps throughout the day, I burned 750 calories more than if I did the 10,000 all in one go.
Isn't that interesting? So
I said, that is fascinating.
Yeah, there's some effect, some different effect, isn't there?
Yeah. It's a different mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, it makes so much sense because it doesn't seem like we're meant to be doing one thing for, hours upon hours.
Yeah. And the body switches off into the same thing. It's like, if you exercise and you do the same exercises every day, after a while, it's not having as much effect as if you vary what you do.
Mm-hmm. You have something in your book I want to get to in a second called, I thought it was so funny, but it's in chapter 2, and it's called Gravipause. And I want to ask you about that in a second, but before I forget, because this has been on my mind since I knew we were going to have you on the show. We had a guy on our show back on episode 506, and his name was Andrew Fletcher, and he does a lot of research with the incline.
I know him of him anyway.
Yeah. So, what do you think about his work, the incline bed therapy?
He's a very bright guy,
and
I haven't been able to figure it out. I've tried, obviously not exactly what he's talking about. I don't sleep as well, frankly, that way, but I'm sure there is something there. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because he has all the reasons. We spent a couple hours with him, and he's got a lot of research and things that he's doing. But
and he's very bright. I mean, he knows his physics, and I don't know.
Yeah,
there's something there. I'm sure. We just don't understand. What I tell people is, he said, "Well, the doctor gave me this, and the doctor gave me." I said, "Look, first of all, you have to become aware of your body.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, if you want to be cured of anything, you better become aware of your body. Listen to your body.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, understand how your body works. I mean, and we don't know 100% how the body works. Oh, we have some ideas. We have ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We have hypotheses. We think we know.
Right.
But we're discovering new things all the time. And getting down to basics like Mother Nature and the universe, and what are we given? We're given light, and we're given gravity, and we're given magnetic fields, and Lord knows we don't know what magnetic fields it is.
Mm-hmm.
Few theories here and there, but we can't measure them as carefully. And who knows what else is out there? And we don't look at the lymphatic system and its circulation except when someone has cancer and they have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the lymphatic system is so key, and it's so overlooked. We've talked to doctors on our show, and they don't go through any training about the lymphatics.
Totally. And not only that, what about cerebral spinal fluid? Years ago, there was a professor of psychiatry at Stanford who happened to be working with someone who was looking at the cerebrospinal fluid. And I thought, well, okay, he had done a study with ballerinas. and in ballerinas, as they spin around, the various transmitters that are in the brain would layer in the cerebrospinal. So depending on where you sampled in the spine, you would get a different predominance of a certain transmitter.
Really?
As far as I know, nobody's ever seen anything like that again. But it makes sense. There is no pump.
So
and who knows what that sort of thing does?
So in different areas of the spine, they would have different transmitters?
Different amines.
And then they would test that during the time that a ballerina was practicing?
Yes.
Wow, that is interesting.
It's just that physical motion, which after all is like a centrifuge if you're spinning.
Yeah. There's so much about the body that we don't know. Isn't that fascinating?
You've got a lifetime and a half of work ahead of you.
I know. I feel like it. On one hand, it's so fascinating because I feel like we know so much. There's so much that we know now versus 100 years ago. But then, when you look at the totality of everything there is to know, I feel like we don't even know 1% of what's going on.
No, and there's a whole era where so much specialization has happened.
Mm-hmm.
And then going to minutiae, like molecular biology, and I don't have anything against it, you have to understand what happens there.
Right.
And genetics, everything was genetics. Well, now we know maybe genetic predisposition is about 20% of what happens to you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are saying now that on a physical level, at least, not on any other emotional, spiritual level, but on a physical level, they're saying now that people should start looking into the mitochondria instead of genetics. Go a layer up.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense that in order to get things done, you need circulation, you need oxygen, you need energy. What are the things you need?
Mm-hmm.
You need to maintain the sensitivity of your system. Let's try and put them down together and see what are we missing. And we miss a lot, and it starts early. Look at a child. If you want to understand the body, look at a child. Mm-hmm. Look at a child. A child is born from the weightlessness of the womb, basically. Never experienced gravity in its full, sort of only indirect.
Mm-hmm.
So it's born and it can't hold its head up. And it has to develop those muscles in the neck to be able to hold the head up. And so on and so forth from there on. Mm-hmm. And as it learns to live with gravity from scratch. Okay. And what does it do? We call it plays. And it moves in every which way.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't sit still much, except now with texting machines. That's a different story. Don't get me there.
Yeah.
And which I think is tragic, actually.
Uh-huh.
Because we don't know what's going to happen to these kids.
Yeah, I don't have a cell phone for lots of reasons. I've never owned one, but I see the impact it has just on a physiological level on people. Oh. It's amazing.
Oh, I don't either.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one in the car just in case the car breaks down, but that's because my kids insisted.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it makes sense on some levels, like you said, to do that. But gosh, I'm just looking at it. Just does not look good physiologically for these people.
Young people put the wretched phones under their pillows.
Mm.
And he says, "Oh, I sleep." I said, "Okay, so why do you need the cell phone if you're sleeping?"
Right. No. It makes no sense, does
it? I said, so what? What are you going to miss? I mean, it is just unbelievable. And something has to be done. I don't know what is going to be done, but it's absolutely preposterous.
I've seen some things. I enjoy the technology advancing. Yeah. I love that, but I think it's important to understand how to use it. And I've seen some apps they have now where you can put something like a little electrode or piece of tape, I think it is, on your shoulder, and it could measure your posture, so your phone will beep at you every time you're out of posture, something like that. But
that's good.
Yeah,
I like that.
Good. That's good, right? I mean, that's better than
because even the sitting, what sitting does is you slouch.
Right.
You slump and you slouch. Yeah. And even if you're not exactly sitting up, I'm sure it makes a whole lot of difference.
Mm-hmm.
If you sit up properly and you put a book on your head and it doesn't fall off.
Right. I have a phone, an iPod Touch, which is, you can't call or text on it, so I just use it for Instagram and things. And when I do, I bend, so I squat like I put my feet on the ground and I squat all the way down like I'm going to the bathroom. And that way I can keep the curvature of my spine and my neck completely straight. That's probably got to be better, right? Do you think?
Yeah. Well, I think that there are some things, even when you're sitting, that you can do, because I've been trying to, people ask me, what can I do while I'm sitting?
Uh-huh.
Well, you're trying to get out of standing, but that's beside the point.
Right.
there are things, I'm sure, you can set up. And Eric Goodman, you know Eric Goodman's work on the foundation training?
I'm familiar with him, but I'm not that familiar with him. I know his name.
Well, he had a car accident and his spine was injured, and so he started developing what he could do to fix it, and he has, and it's developed into a huge program.
Oh, wow.
So basically, he does what you just said. He's squatted as if he's going to the toilet.
Uh-huh.
And so that your feet are under your knees, not your knees are not ahead of your feet.
That's right. Okay? That's right.
And then he rotates from the hip straight forward, with his arms straight up on either side of his ears.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And goes forward and then holds it.
Okay.
Are you with me? You're doing it?
No, I'm not doing it, but yeah, I can imagine that. Yeah.
Okay. And you hold it for a minute or 5 minutes or whatever, you know, as you, and it is wonderful. It relieves your back beautifully. Oh. And I wondered if just that provides enough triggering of systems. It certainly relieves your back.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
And, okay, so when you're sitting, you're not actually stimulating your legs, which with a as you do with a squat, but at least your position, your upper body position, from the hip rotation all the way up, must do something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it must, right?
And there must be things you can do. I'm sure there must be ways, like maybe put your feet on a vibrating platform or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of people use those. I was curious about what your thoughts are about what seems to be way more natural than standing, because, like you said, I mean, it's not normal to stand for hours on end either. What do you think about the treadmill desks? Do you think those are any good?
No.
No?
No. First of all, I'm biased because I can't concentrate. And it's like I can't concentrate if my feet are moving.
Okay. That's funny.
Maybe it's my deficiency. But apart from that, you don't need to.
So you're saying if as long as you just have that pattern interrupt every half hour, you're okay?
Yeah, as long as you stand up and you're triggering your... Why are you standing up? You're standing up for two reasons. One is your circulation, so to send blood up to your brain. And the other is to provide the signal for your vestibular system and probably other brain systems that to keep them sharp and responsive.
I wanted to ask you about your part in your book where you talked about gravipause. What is that?
Yeah. Well, it's really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about giving your system a pause from gravity.
Uh-huh.
That the system, our body, responds, function best if we have pauses.
Okay.
So anything sustained is tiring. And probably less effective. The body sees it as one stimulus. When you stand up, the body sees it as one change.
Okay.
One signal. Whereas if you stand up for 1 hour, 2 hours, and you're standing, the body has seen that as one. A stimulus of one.
Of one, I get it. Okay.
But if you stand up every 30 minutes or whatever, your body sees it in as many minutes.
Ah.
And that allows you to respond, to adjust to the response, and come back to normal, and then respond again.
I see. So it's constantly making the body adjust and recalibrate, adjust and recalibrate. That makes sense.
It's constantly telling it, you can respond.
Okay.
I am here. You can respond. You are ready.
You know what? I want to apply what you're just talking about physiologically with sitting and standing in the the mechanics, the biomechanics of our body, to something I've been doing recently, which is intermittent fasting, where typically what I'll do is I'll finish my meal around 6 p.m. and then I don't eat breakfast till 10 a.m. And so do the same principles apply, do you think, to digestion?
Well, I hadn't thought about it that way, but I do the same thing.
Oh, okay.
And it's interesting because I grew up, I never had breakfast when we were growing up.
Uh-oh, you missed the most important meal of the day.
That's what that tells me, so I must be really dumb and incapable. And, I haven't had any breakfast even when I grew up. I don't eat breakfast.
And you're a doctor.
I have a cup of coffee. And and I used to apologize, but I have no desire to eat breakfast.
Yeah.
And I eat my evening meal around 6 o'clock. And it's not particularly, the biggest meal is the lunchtime or the middle of the day meal, and a lighter something at about 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And then, like if I do yoga and I don't come back till noon, I won't eat lunch till noon. Mm-hmm. If I'm home, I might eat a bite before, but it's healthy. It feels good for me. I didn't have to do it. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was natural. So I've done it all my life, and people say, "Oh, intermittent fasting is really good." Oh, really? Okay. Mm-hmm. I've been doing it all my life.
I know you do it.
I don't know any other way.
Well, it makes sense because, a lot of people do these really intense cleanses, or they'll do like water fasting or all this kind of stuff for 30 days. But if you're introducing, stimulus that's constant and variable to the body over time that's different, I would imagine it's the same approach physiologically that you're talking about with sitting and standing. Yeah.
I think you've got a point there. It's very interesting, the human body, isn't it?
So much information, I tell you. It's but you know what? So much of it is. We had a doc on. You're probably familiar with him, Dr. Jack Cruz, some time ago, and he talks a lot about light and mitochondria and these types of electromagnetics and things. And he's a brain surgeon. I think he's in Louisiana, but he's a really interesting guy. And he was given the science behind all of this stuff that we're talking about today. But at the end, it was really fascinating because really what it comes down to is common sense and just getting back to nature, right? Just, it's simple.
Yeah.
Super simple.
Yeah. Allowing yourself to see and hear and feel. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. A couple last questions for you. I know you had this at the end of one of your other talks, but I was thinking about it anyway. Are these different types of chairs, do you think there's any value in the different, I know there's all kinds of different ergonomic chairs. Do you think there's any value in those?
Well, it's interesting. I just came back from Vegas from the ergonomic conference. Mm-hmm. And the conclusion there was that, there's no one chair fits all. And the problem with most chairs is that a company finds a good deal and buys 2,000 chairs for their employees without any regards to the shape of their body or their habits.
Right.
And that it's, I found, we bought a chair for where our PC is, our desk, my husband and I, and we finally threw it away. And we are down to a wooden chair. And it's interesting because I have one of those air pillows that you stand on.
Oh, okay.
Except I've put it under a regular pillow and I sit on it.
Oh, okay.
And my husband says, "Oh, I don't like that. It helps me with a great deal is if I lean on it in the back."
Oh, wow. New use. Okay.
Yeah. And I think something like, focal, which is sitting on a like a rod that sways.
I've seen those, yeah.
Yeah, and to some extent, maybe it keeps your muscles a bit alert and awake instead of slumping in It doesn't allow you to slump in your chair.
Mm-hmm. I've seen those, yeah.
Yeah. But, our bodies are not made for sitting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure...
They were made for kings.
Yeah, right. Made for kings. I mean, it probably makes sense to get the best chair that you can, but still have your overall approach move in the direction of not sitting as much,
Right. Yeah. I suppose you could have a chair that has a little buzz and push once in a while, and you can program it to
that would be
to kick you out of your chair.
Oh, it's so funny because we're trying to do think of all these inventive, ingenious ways to keep doing the things that are not so
we don't do it.
Yeah. It's so funny, isn't it? Humans will do anything to keep doing the things that are damaging them,
Yeah. And we stop playing. That's a big problem.
Yeah, talk about that. That's so important. I've been thinking about that a lot lately.
When you stop and think about it, the things, the play we do, as children, of course, but as adults also, involve gravity. Whether it's a motorbiker or whether it's, jumping out of planes or skydiving or running or whatever it is, that we swinging on a swing, trampoline, roller coaster, you name it, all things that we consider fun involve gravity. So there's an element of thrill that comes with experiencing elation.
Right.
Comes with experiencing gravity.
Uh-huh.
And then we stop playing. We no longer would dream of getting on a roller coaster.
I know.
Or even we stop, some of us stop riding a motorcycle.
Right.
Or we have to get a more sedate sedan and not a Corvette.
Right, right.
Or whatever. And we age ourselves because we stop playing. And I think we need to remember never to stop playing. And the people who don't stop playing are the ones who live to a ripe old age and have fun all along.
Yeah, it seems to me is the case that's what's going on, because you see people that are connected to, their work and their passion and what they're here to do. They have a goal, and they have,
and curiosity.
Curiosity, a feeling of connectedness to what their mission is,
Yes.
So important, but then it's also, if you know what your mission is, it's one thing also to be clear of that, and most people aren't. But then also to let go of that and do what you're talking about is have some fun every now and then.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Gotta have that, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You've got to love what you're doing.
Yeah, you gotta love it.
Yeah, you've got to love it.
All right, so
you might as well pack it in.
Where can people find more about you? What is your website if people want to connect with you?
It's simple, www.joanvernikos.com.
JoanVernikos.com. Okay, we will link that up. And
Great.
And so your other books, you have Sitting Kills, Moving Heals, and then your other book is Designed to Move, the science-backed program to fighting sitting disease and enjoying lifelong health.
Correct.
Yes. Is that, let's see, when did that one come out? Is that one more recent?
It came out in December.
Oh, okay. But right.
It's been reprinted. I mean, you wouldn't know it because somebody was late to the forward. And there were a couple of errors in there which we corrected. So officially it's been out since December.
Okay. Well, that's cool. So important. Well, Doc, thanks for joining us. Thanks for your time today. I really appreciate it. Thanks for your work.
I did too. I had fun. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome. And I'll be in touch in the next few days. What is this, Monday? Is today Monday?
It is Monday.
Okay, I'll be in touch probably by Wednesday, and I'll send you the link to the show, and you can pass it on if you like.
Super. Thank you very, very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. Pleasure. Yeah, thank you, Joan. I will talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. I have been a huge fan of rebounding for many, many years, and if you want to get in great cardiovascular shape tone your legs, back, and butt and stomach, as well as cleanse your lymphatic system from toxins and chemicals. You just have to start rebounding. It's imperative. And not only will it create endorphins that quickly become addictive to you, but it's very low impact as well. It helps to prevent sicknesses and diseases, as well as increase bone density, and it flushes toxins from your lymphatic system. It's amazing. And not only that, but it's a ton of fun also. I do it every single day for about 15 minutes. And we found the best rebounder on the market today in the world, bar none. It's called the Bellicon Rebounder. It's the Rolls-Royce of rebounders, in my opinion. And let's listen to some of what our guests have had to say about rebounding. Robert von Sarbacher is a health researcher and creator of the Mini Beat Protocol. And Robert, what's your favorite exercise?
In general, probably one of the number one anti-aging exercises on the planet is rebounding. So 15 minutes a day is good for that. You can find people who have had thermography scans on cancers, giant tumors, and when they're doing a rebounder, it would start spewing out and shrinking right in front of your eyes, the tumor would, as they're on the rebounder. So it's really good for that sort of thing. It's also very good for exercising internal organs. It's the only internal organ exerciser that I know of known to man.
Dr. Lindsay Duncan is the CEO and founder of Genesis Today. And what's the best way that you think of to stimulate the lymphatic system of the body?
Rebounding is incredible because it's good for the lymphatic system, and there's more lymph fluid in the body than there is blood. And the quickest way and the most effective way to get the lymphatic system flowing is through rebounding itself.
Yeah, because the lymphatic system can't really detox itself, can it? I think you
know. The heart, we have the heart, thank you, for pumping blood. And we don't have a heart to pump lymphatic fluid. The only thing that really can pump lymphatic fluid is cardiovascular exercise utilizing the thighs, the thigh muscles. And that's why rebounding and getting a burn in that thigh muscle is so important for the flow and the stimulation of the lymphatic fluid.
Wow, and they even put cancer patients on rebounding, don't they?
Nutritionists do.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but not a conventional doctor. But yeah, I've been learning about rebounding lately. It's quite an amazing thing.
Yeah, rebounding's amazing.
Health researcher and author of Cancer Step Outside the Box, Ty Bollinger. What do you do in your life to prevent cancer?
What do you do to treat cancer? What do you do to prevent it? Rebounding is something that I try to do on a daily basis. A little mini trampoline for those people that aren't familiar with the term rebounding, but it's basically just jumping up and down on a little mini tramp. What that does is it stimulates the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is one of our primary detoxification systems in our body, and most folks don't stimulate their lymph flow, and so the toxicity in their body builds up because their lymph is not stimulated, and the up-down motion on a rebounder stimulates the lymph flow better than just about any other exercise. So I do that almost on a daily, probably 5 days a week, I would say I average doing that.
And finally, author and speaker and creator of the Longevity Now program, David Wolf. Do you think the Bellicon is the best rebounder on the market today?
Absolutely. I was just with the crew in Europe that does the Bellicon Rebounder, which is an incredible rebounder. My God, what a machine. And it doesn't use metal springs. It uses like flexi ropes. So it's very soft and fun, and it's just great to play with.
Well, there you have it. The up and down G-force actually stimulates every single cell in your body. It's incredible. And as someone who works out in the gym a lot and does Qigong, I think that the best physical aerobic exercise, in my opinion, is rebounding. It's just absolutely incredible for the human body. And the Bellicon is silent, and it comes with a warranty, and you can get them in several different sizes and colors, and some of them have bars that you can hold on to in case you're worried about balance. It's a well worth it investment in your health and in your future. So check them out in our store if you'd like, or you can check out the videos on extremehealthradio.com/Bellicon. Again, that's extremehealthradio.com/Bellicon. That's B as in boy, ELLICON. Okay, there you go. Episode 546 with Dr. Joan Vernikos. What do you guys think about that? You know, I always think it's really interesting when people come on the show to discuss such high-level topics like this. I mean, she's a doctor, a director at NASA, And she's got to come on to our show and talk to us about how it's important to stand and not sit so much. I mean, where have we got to as a culture, as a society, where we need, an expert to come on and talk to us about such seemingly simple ideas? But I think it's one of the things that, we just get trapped in. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and I was telling him, he was talking about his heart and things. And, I was saying that one of the most beneficial things you could ever do is to stop sitting, to simply stand, get a moving desk, a treadmill desk or a standing desk or something. And it's so important. And I want to share with you a couple things, some stats that I have that I wanted to share during the show, but I didn't get a chance. Let's see. It is from the article that I wrote, Why Your Office Chair is Killing You, The Dangers of Sitting. It says here that whether tending our crops or hunting wild boar, most of our lives as humans were lived on our feet. But with the advent of TV, computers, and the desk job, we're sitting down more than ever before in history. It says here 9.3 hours a day. I suspect if you add in sleeping to that, it gets up into 15 to 20 hours a day, kind of a deal. Even more time than we spend sleeping, 7.7 hours. Our bodies weren't built for that, and it's starting to take its toll. And so it says here that sitting increases risk of death by all causes up to 40%. Sitting 6+ hours per day makes you up to 40% likelier to die within 15 years than someone who sits less than 3 hours a day, even if you exercise. And this is one of the things that kind of kicked my butt into high gear when I heard Dr. Vernikos a few years ago. And that was, oh crap, I exercise a lot, but I sit a lot too. So I might sit for 10 hours a day, but I work out, 4 to 5 times a week. I walk the dogs. I lift weights. I do yoga, but I'm sitting for 10 hours a day. And so there's no way around, at least according to the research and according to the studies, that damage that you're doing doesn't get mitigated by exercise at all. And to some capacity, I'm sure it does, maybe by, burning calories and these types of things. But the health effects, the damaging effects of having your body not be able to communicate with itself, restricting blood flow to the lower portion of your body, to your colon, to the lower half of your upper body if you're sitting. These types of things can't be outdone or mitigated by, doing bench press. It just doesn't work like that. So you gotta stand more than you're sitting. So let's see. Let me read a couple more things here. Studies show that only reducing, what does it say here? Studies show that only reducing sitting time helps. Okay, so yeah, so you got to reduce the sitting time. Sitting makes us fat. Obese people sit for 2.5 more hours per day than thin people, and 1 in 3 Americans is obese. And it says here between 1980 and 2000, exercise rates stayed about the same, but sitting time increased by 8%. So that means by 1980 to 2000, a 20-year gap there, exercise rates stayed the same, but sitting increased 8%, and obesity doubled. Now, I'm not sure if that's obesity by percentage or obesity by, raw numbers, because if it's raw numbers, you could just account for population increase for that. But I'm sure it's based on percentages here. And it says sitting expends almost zero energy. And it says here how sitting wrecks your body. As soon as you sit, electrical activity in the leg muscle shuts off. Calorie burning drops to 1 calorie per minute. Enzymes that help break down fat drop by 90%. And after 2 hours of sitting, good cholesterol drops by 20%. After 24 hours, insulin effectiveness drops 24%, and the risk of diabetes dramatically increases. People with sitting jobs have twice the rate of cardiovascular disease as people with standing jobs. Wow. How to get out of your chair alive. For many of us, sitting 8 hours a day at our job is inevitable, but it's the extra sitting outside of work that turns a serious problem to actually being deadly. So the recommended 30 minutes of activity per day is simply not enough, interrupting sitting whenever you can. So stretching, walking, jumping jacks, do anything you can to get off the couch or get off the office chair. So this is really, really important stuff here, people, because, it's it's one thing to eat a diet of superfoods and mushrooms and herbs and tinctures and all this cool stuff, but if you're sitting a lot, it's my contention that you're probably not mitigating any of that. It says here, get off the couch. Those who sit 3 hours or more per day watching TV are 64% more likely to die from heart disease. Of those who sit in front of the TV 3 hours or more per day, those who exercise are just as fat than those that don't. Each extra hour of watching TV equals 11% higher death risk. So one of the things that we like to do, Kate and I will watch TV every now and then. We like to watch Modern Family. It's a fun show. But what I'll do during that time is we have this red light that we do, or I will do, we have the SOTA, let's see, the PEMF device, or I'll get a lacrosse ball and I'll stretch. And so going back to the work, we're going to have this lady on too. She's really interesting. What is her name? Katie Bowman. Let me find her website. She's really fascinating lady. Katie Bowman. And we might be able to get her in studio, actually. Her website is called nutritiousmusement.com. And when I watched one of her talks a few years ago, I really, really got into the idea of not using a couch or chairs or anything like that. So anytime I'm watching TV, I'm sitting. I'm not sitting. I'm on the ground. I'm stretching. And so I'll do stretching while I'm watching TV, and it helps so much. Or I'll lay down and then I'll stretch, and I'll just basically move a lot while I'm watching something, because all of this is not natural for us at all. And she really got me to start looking at how it is that we can have smooth objects like exercise equipment or smooth, phones or desks. Like this smooth sort of texture is not found anywhere in nature, really. And so she's a really fascinating woman. So we're going to have her on the show too. I've been working on getting her for a couple of years. We've just been kind of going back and forth and missed each other a few times. So her website's Nutritious Movement. So what I'll do is I'll link that up in the show notes of today's show, which was extremehealthradio.com/546. So first of all, I want to thank you guys for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the show. And I'll put the show notes to Dr. Joan's books, as well as the article I wrote, as well as the Andrew Fletcher interview we did with him about incline bed therapy, and as well as the foundation training by Dr. Eric Goodman. We should maybe reach out to him. He sounds like an interesting guy. So I'll put all those links back on extremehealthradio.com/546. So thanks guys for joining us. We really appreciate it. Some of our upcoming shows, most of you guys know that we do broadcast a couple days a week. So if you're subscribed to our newsletter, which you can do anywhere on our site, you'll be notified of all of our shows. And that's something that you could follow to keep up to date with our stuff. Our upcoming shows is going to be with Dr. Dan Engel next. We're going to be talking about concussions, and he's the naturopathic doctor that my wife Kate has been seeing recently. So we're going to be bringing him in studio. That should be a fun show. Then we're going to have Patrick Durkin on, and we're going to get really, really dive deep on energizing and infusing good energy into water. And then we have Rhea Carlson on. She's going to be talking about bee venom therapy, and the idea of using, they call it apitherapy, but using bee venoms and bee bites to enhance your immune system. So think about this. Think about, let's say you had, surgery on your knee, or let's say you had, something going on in a particular area of your body, right? You could do something like DMSO and something like that, but then you could do a bee venom on top of it or before it. And that way it tells your body that this is where we need to send our white blood cells and the cleanup crew and to focus all of our energy in this particular area of the body. So you could use bee venom therapy along with other therapies, topical, over surgery sites or places on your body that you want to get more circulation and healing. So it's a pretty interesting concept. So we'll be talking with Rhea Carlson about bee venom therapy. So like I said, if you haven't joined our newsletter list, stay up to date. That way you can get access to all the shows when they come out. And we also put some cool offers in there, stuff, perks, that only members get. So, if you want to keep up to date with our shows, do that. I want to let you guys know too, we are launching our member site, very, very soon, our academy that we're going to be launching. And this is going to be a place for all of us to be able to get access to high-level courses from a lot of the different people that we've accessed over the years, teaching courses, in-depth courses, practical information about how to overcome all of your health issues. We're going to be having Q&As with doctors, so you'll be able to get all your health questions answered. All of those will be alphabetized. You can download stuff, and there's going to be video courses. It's going to be an awesome place. It's going to be the place for anyone who wants to take their health to the next level to join. I'm telling you, it's going to be awesome, awesome, awesome stuff. So we're going to be adding new stuff every single month. So if you guys want to join the Extreme Health Academy, we're really excited about this. And it's something that I've been wanting for myself for years, but there's just nothing out there that is going to be able to do all the stuff that we're going to do. So we're really excited about this. And we're working with a particular doctor to be the focal point of all the courses, but we're also going to have courses from other doctors too. So when we're at liberty to reveal who that doctor is, I think you guys are going to be super excited because he's an awesome, awesome guy. So we're really excited. So anyway, if you guys want access to the member academy that we're going to be launching, go to extremehealthradio.com/546, and I'll put a link to that on that particular show page. That way, we're going to be launching with just crazy discounts and deals. So that way, if you register, we will let you know of all the deals that you're going to get by registering. And that way you never have to pay more if the price ever increases. So you want to get in on that deal as soon as you possibly can. So we won't notify you until maybe a couple weeks before we launch, or open the door. So we will let you know when we launch. And thanks, guys, for listening. Thank you for your support on Amazon, for buying through our Amazon link that's on the right-hand side of our website. Thanks for purchasing from our store. We have the rebounder, the saunas, all this kind of cool stuff in our store. So thanks for your continuous purchases through our store, which help keep the show going. Thank you for your donations. Those of you that donate on a monthly basis via PayPal or Patreon, you guys know who you are. And we are so, so thankful. So thanks for doing that. We really appreciate it. We couldn't do this show without you guys. We love you. So thank you for that. And there'll be links to do all these things if you guys want at extremehealthradio.com/546, which is the show page for today's show. So love you guys. Thank you. Let us know if we can ever help, and we'll catch you on the next show.
No material on this blog is intended to suggest that you should not seek professional medical care. Always work with qualified medical professionals, even if you educate yourself in the field of live food, nutrition, and alternative medicine. I'm not a doctor, nor am I offering readers medical advice of any kind. None of the information offered here should be interpreted as a diagnosis of any disease, nor an attempt to treat or prevent any disease or condition. While information in